Staying cool in that summertime heat with our friends at St. Luke's and the Just Start the Conversation podcast. It's brought to you by St. Luke's University Health Network with the amazing and wonderful and incomparable duo that is Jody McCloud Missmer and Amie Alanson Dundon. I'm your host, Kevin Crockett. Ladies, good to be back with you once again. Excited to get into another conversation today. How's summer been? I feel like I haven't even gotten the chance to talk to you. We haven't taken any beach trips. Like, come on.
Yes.
She's been there several times. Don't even let her play.
Yeah.
Gosh, guess my invite was lost in the mail.
Oh,
Yeah.
So sorry. The beach is my happy place. So yes, I get there as much as I can, a week and a half this summer, but hey.
Oh, okay.
I'll take it.
I'm just saying, Jody and I that's fine. We could have spent a day.
I know. I would have gone. I mean, it's close. I think she was in Jersey. We could have driven down and driven back.
Yeah,
but
we could have had a whole Thelma and Louise ride down on a Corvette and stuff like that, but it's an opportunity missed. So we'll work on it for next summer.
Okay.
Next summer.
It's all right.
But nonetheless, excited to see. This is what's fun is we have some very serious conversations on this podcast, but we also like to be not as so serious all the time, which is a good thing. So getting ready to jump into our conversation for today. One that as a dad with two young kids, a daughter going into second grade, a son that isn't quite yet into kindergarten, a conversation that I know we've had in our house a number of times that typically starts with, what the heck are we going to do? As we get set to talk about kids, children, young adults, and the social media and AI world that we are living in right now. I know as a parent who we kind of were talking off of camera here a little while ago about how happy we were that we weren't in the era of social media as we were doing the young, dumb things that typically young people do. But now as parents, I know for myself especially, I'm going to have to be on the lookout for those dumb things. So Jody, I'm going to go ahead and start with you on this one. What is social media for people that are just like, what kind of umbrella is that? What all are we covering underneath of that?
Yeah, so I actually took the time to research a little bit about what social media was because I started asking people this week. Once I knew our topic, I started asking people, what's social media? And everyone kept coming up with one or two social media platforms. So they talked about Facebook, they talked about Instagram, they talked about Snapchat, and they talked about TikTok. And it was interesting because when I went online and looked up what is the definition of social media, it is social networking, which a lot of those that people think about is social networking, but it's also the process of bookmarking, it's media sharing, it's social news, microblogging, and online forum sites. So it's really came down to an interactive interface that happens virtually is essentially what it is. So it doesn't have to be Facebook. It actually, Pinterest is considered a social media site, which sort of shocked me. It's not one of the top 10 of what people would think of. But if I were to ask you to name social media sites, I'm going to give you 10 seconds.
Okay.
All right. So give me 10 seconds of social media.
Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat,
Twitter or X, whatever they're calling that now.
Twitter.
YouTube, WhatsApp, WeChat, Douyin, which quite honestly looks like Do You In, Telegram. Twitter is actually not considered one of the top 10 social media sites. In America, it's fairly popular, but it's actually not, or X, correct, as it's not one of the top ones, but it's real-time connection, it's niche communities. So it's really that real-time element that speaks to the population who use it, and it leads to some great things, right? Some great information sharing, some pieces, but there are three things that they highlight that focuses on what that can do. And number one is disinformation, the inability to fact check things in a timely manner, creating polarization, shocker there, we're not polarized at all. And then the last one is harmful psychological effects. And so those are the three areas that, and we'll source this site that I got that information from. But I think if you think about it, disinformation and polarization probably lead anyone to harmful psychological effects. It doesn't have to come from a virtual platform, but in this, you can't fact check. And there's actually, well, it may be a bot, but there's something or someone, pushing that out.
Yeah.
Amie, I'm interested in as we're kind of trying to understand all of those things. I think it's one thing for an adult who maybe has some life experience to maybe possibly kind of make their own decisions based on their own history, their own background, their own upbringing. I have to think that's particularly difficult to rationalize and understand for a kid, a child, an adolescent, or preteen. From a developmental standpoint, can we kind of go into what social media is all about for someone of that age, and how, particularly as parents or teachers or adults that are involved in our kids' lives, to kind of help them understand what information may actually be real and true, and to bring up that keyword disinformation that Jody had mentioned, what kind of is the difference there?
So when I was thinking about this, I was really looking at this as what makes online interactions really so different from in-person ones is their permanent, right, and often public nature. So when we were in, middle school, somebody would put a note in our locker and you would read it, and you may be a little upset about it, but it goes back in your locker and you process it and it goes away. Now the note's on social media and it's permanent and it's public for everybody to see, which is one of the things that's hard when our brains aren't developed, right, to be able to kind of process that through. So 90% of a child's brain is developed by age 5. Now, the most vulnerable time we know in brain development is age 8. How do we know that? Because at around age 8, there's increased impact by stress and external stimuli. That's around the age 8, 9, 10. Stress from the outside and taking in external stimuli is having the biggest effect on our brain. So in that 10 to 12 then age range, there's a fundamental shift that spurs humans to seek social rewards, including attention and peer approval.
So I'm going to pause. So I'm 9. I'm starting to feel a little worldly stress or pressure. And I kind of, maybe I'm internalizing that. But then at 12, now I'm kind of putting together that everyone around me plays a role in how I feel about it.
Right, and so we decided in our infinite wisdom that at age like 8 to 12, like just when little brains are completely trying to formulate who they are based on what they see in the world and what their feedback is, we hand them a machine that says, okay, 24/7 now, your brain is gonna get all of this information that's scrolling on your phone, and this is how the imprint on your brain is going to be burned in.
Is that the most common age? Because is that around the age, and full disclosure, I didn't look that particular piece up, but is 8 to 10, 8 to 12 the time when we start to see kids interact?
So we know, most of your social media platforms will say you can't have an account till you're 13. However, we know that most parents are getting their kiddos' phones in that, 9, 10, 11, 12 range, when either they're going to be home alone for a little bit after school, in terms of like they don't necessarily go to daycare anymore, but parents aren't home for another hour, or as a way to kind of be safe and connect with their kids, or you have sports practice, or you need a ride. That's usually the age when kids are starting to receive these little brain machines.
It's interesting because my niece has a tablet that she had for school when the schools shut down. and they utilize Facebook Messenger, not Facebook. So it's not a Facebook account, but it's a Facebook Messenger account. And she'll message me and play games back and forth with me, but I don't know how secure that is. So it's interesting that there was even a part during the shutdown that we especially introduced social networking, because, you know, we listed the famous ones or the most popular ones, but schools have their own social media platforms. You know, they have their own interactive elements. So
We have ours at work.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have Teams.
Yeah.
Microsoft Teams.
Shout out to Microsoft Teams.
Shout out. So we give them that at this time. So why is that a problem?
Well, so on one hand, it's a great thing, right? Social learning, social connectedness, regular learning. I mean, there's a lot of really good things. Being able to express creativity in different ways, right? That you couldn't before social media. Expanding your friend groups. I mean, pro and con, but that can be a pro, right? Depending on kiddos.
Well, I said niche communities,
Yeah.
right? So you're finding niche communities.
Right, you're finding
yeah.
your people.
Sure.
You know, it's a good way to find your people. You know, but we also know that too much, and there's the big question, what's too much? But too much unsupervised social media time when you're in your brain's developing, we're seeing increased anxiety, increased depression, disturb sleep patterns, lower energy, you know, and then fewer kids if your whole world is 24/7 on social media and AI. And when I think AI, I also think video games where we're attached to people all over the world, right? And I'm playing a video game with my friend or an acquaintance in Taiwan, and I'm playing, you know, that's all social feedback, right? The brain, that's all developing the brain. You know, then we're finding that there's not a lot of interest sometimes in homework and sports and doing things outside of the home. So there's pros and cons to everything. There was, you know, pros and cons before social media. You know, we had to figure out what was going to be good for kids' brains, but you know, right now this is what we have. It's not going anywhere. This is the new normal. And you know, one of the things that I think is so fascinating to me is that really social media apps and the websites, kind of like you're talking about, have the same kind of effect on the brain as playing a slot machine. So think about that, right? You know, since you don't know the content you'll see until you open that app,
Right.
right? It's those spontaneous results.
So the number one reason social media is used, not by, I'm just saying in general, is what? What do you think it is? According to the website that I found.
Gambling.
Gaming, I would say, I would say probably
Marketing.
something along the lines of game.
It's marketing.
Oh.
So
Sure,
when you
yeah.
talk about finding your community, there's a really good shot that community just found you. Not necessarily that you found them or you picked them because of their marketing. Look at all this. I laugh because this whole Barbie marketing, this whole thing, I mean, $150 million or whatever it is for marketing, but it's used for marketing. So when you think about it, you're handing your child a device in order for any company out there to market your child. They get, it's not like a commercial on a television show when you can get up and walk away. Everything they see, everything, and the ad before the YouTube video plays, the TikTok influencers, all that, it's all marketing. So I think that's the piece that was really eye-opening for me when I was reading through this. I mean, our children are older, so we're at a completely different phase, and it wasn't really an issue, I would say. It was around, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. So it's interesting to hear you say that it's so influential on a child. And mainly because of where they are developmentally,
Yes.
not because of who they are
No.
and their choices they make and all this thing. It's a developmental.
100%. You know, and also then who their role models, their parents, or the people they're living with. You know, you guys are the example. you're showing them by what you're doing, how much time is good to be on social media. And do you have rules about social media and internet connection that everybody in the household follows? Are you putting your phones away at dinner? Are you having family time or game night where phones go away? Or are you kind of looking at your own phone while you're playing Monopoly with a kid?
Yes. Oh, you weren't asking me. Yes.
Okay. But your kids are also older.
Yes, this is true. I'm just being honest.
So
Monopoly,
Crockett.
nobody in Monopoly plays by the same rules, so everyone's on their phone going, no, look, you get
That's right. That's right.
That's
or
true
when
too.
you play Scrabble with
we
my
look up-
87-year-old mother and she puts something down, I'm like, that's not a word. And
And
I
you
look it
gotta
up
look
and
up
I'm
the
like,
dictionary, yeah.
oh, that's a word.
That's a word.
Of course, I'm also looking up other words so that I can cheat in the next. Sorry, Mom. Don't worry. She doesn't listen.
Don't
You're
worry.
cheating with your mother at Scrabble.
She's 87.
Jody.
She's won plenty of games.
Right?
It's okay
She's
for
got
to
her
win.
whole
Sure.
she's got a whole history of wins behind her. And none of them documented on social media, I might add.
That's true.
They just exist in her mind.
That's
I know.
true.
Hey,
know.
look, Grandma
Listen.
Hawk took it first. Now it's my mom. It's time for new blood.
All right, we're not condoning cheating, kids, at Scrabble if you're listening.
For
No
new
cheating.
blood. It's interesting because Amie, one of the points that you made was just kind of as we all kind of reflect maybe on our childhoods, like different. Like I can remember my parents always saying, "Don't sit down and play video games all day. Go outside. Go run around."
Wait, I'm sorry. There were video games in your day that you could sit and play all day?
Well, the Scrabble boards were all taken.
Understood. Understood.
So, if I was playing Super Mario or playing a football game or doing those sorts of things, I can remember my parents saying, like, you're going to get outside, go do something. And now, though, at that time, you could have said, what good is going to come from this? Esports is a cajillion-dollar business. You can get a scholarship at big-time schools to go play esports and be on their esports teams.
There's
Men's and
esports
women's league.
managers.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, and who would have thought,
Yep.
playing Madden 95 in my garage at that point in time, that could have been something that ultimately got you somewhere. It's a big business right now, playing video games. But just, I think to kind of come back to the point of just what the heck are we supposed to do at this point as a parent at this age? You talk about when do kids start having phones. As a parent, obviously you want to try to be in touch with your kids as much as you can as they get a little older and they want to go out and they want to ride their bikes and go do different things. Are we in a flip phone era as parents now, where maybe just the younger kids start with a flip phone? Hey, let's build some trust and then go from there. But also, it's fascinating just how much, one, you don't know exactly what your kids are downloading. It's tricky. You can hide your tabs, you can hide your apps, you can do all those different things. It's a fascinating time as a parent. So I guess I'll come to you guys and kind of go, we've mentioned different kind of ages. So why don't we start with that? Okay, you're just starting to get your own thing. I'm trusting you with this phone. Just maybe some of the ways that we can try to keep tabs on what's going on, allowing freedom, allowing you to, show that you can be trusted, but also being like, hey, this isn't what we need to be searching at 9:00 at night or still being on our phone and things of that nature. Jody, I'll start with you.
I don't think you want to start with me. So here's my thing. I would say this: if you do not trust your child to use the stove or stay home alone, I would probably be very careful at the pace with which you're introducing something like social media. I think that as a parent, you know your child best, and you need to be honest with yourself. And I've learned that. That's not, trust me, my kids are, my children would listen to this, they'd be like, yeah, right. But I think you do have to give your children things that you have seen or they have demonstrated some other competencies. That's just I think
it's fair.
I think that's just kind of like a basic sort of thing. I think about what you had said about, it's a different time, right? But it depends where you are. So I know kids that still go out and play until it's dark because of where they live. They can do that. They don't have phones Their parents aren't tracking them down. Their parents aren't looking where they are because they live somewhere that the parents feel more comfortable. I think it also depends where you live, what's around you. I think there are more environmental factors that play into, as a parent, my comfort level. But I do think you need to know what your child is kind of able to handle and capable of. That's me, non-therapist, me, mom, who's made huge mistakes.
Yeah. Not yet your mistake.
No.
But
I felt that like right here. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
no. I love that. I love that. What else can you trust them with? And let's start to gauge it off that.
Or how are they affected by, like,
Well,
how they're affected when somebody takes their seat at, Sunday school, and how they behave and how they react and their
Right.
sensitivity.
But I think that opens up the door for conversations then with my 8, 9, 10-year-old to say, tell me 3 things that you saw, or was there anything that you saw today online that was concerning? Have that conversation. What kind of stuff things come up on social media? Did you see anything online that you wanted to talk about or you thought was interesting? Use it instead of, hey, how was your day? Say, hey, how was your day? And let's talk about what you saw on social media today.
Anybody send you anything?
Anybody send
Yeah.
you anything we should talk about? Anything you want me to look at? I think it's not going anywhere. And we've already said there's a lot of reasons social media and AI is really good. So it's going to do a lot of good. So, I think if we can incorporate our days and the end of our days or midday or, make it normal for 7, 8, 9-year-olds to have to report on their social media day to you.
I just think that's so young.
But that's when kids are getting phones, Jody.
Well, no, they're getting phones, but are they necessarily accessing, like, just because okay.
They are. Yes, I'm not saying I don't. I completely agree with you. However,
I feel 112 years old right now.
But listen, think about
Great
kids.
Scrabble player though at that age.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Take on Marilyn. Go ahead.
Goodness gracious.
That
There
just
are
seems
kids
young.
who need those phones to survive at 8 or 9. Think about you. I mean,
Yeah,
you just
yeah.
mentioned kids that kind of live in this rural utopia and they can go play all day and Narnia. I don't know, wherever that might be. But there are.
I'm saying I know children who that is. They're not mine.
For the most part, though,
Right.
most kids, this is a whole nother podcast episode, but with the violence and the unknown in the world and gun stuff and sometimes lock yourself in. You want your kid, depending where you live, you want your kid in the house. You want to be able to look at Life 360 and see exactly where they are. And, if they're going to play video games instead of go roam the streets, have at it.
Hey, look, do as I say, not as I do. I can tell you right now where my 22-year-old daughter is, I literally can pull it up, and I know she's on, I'm not going to say where she is, but actually this comes out later. She's on West 183rd Street in Manhattan. And I tracked her all day yesterday. She's 22, but she was in New York City. So to your example,
Right.
But is that more for us? I think is my question.
I think it is for us because our kids didn't. Our parents didn't have trackers on us, and we lived, and they lived, and we function relatively.
I would be
well.
in so much trouble.
Well, right.
So okay, so then 7, 8, 9 phones. We got that. At what point, from a developmental age, emotional maturity, is there a point where there is kind of what's more important, developmental, emotional maturity, risk and safety? How do I, as a grandparent, I'm not making decisions for my grandchild, but how do you gauge those pieces? So I'm looking at development, I'm looking at age, I'm looking at emotional maturity, and I'm looking at risk and safety. I realize I'm asking you a very heavy question, but
Yeah, I usually come back to the 13 age, and here's why. I usually come back to that because we've passed that really, really formulative 5 to 8 range and 10 to 12 range. And hopefully we've gotten a lot of those needs met in a way where there's not 24/7 material from, all over the country. So I like to go with the 13 age and, because what we also know is the younger kids are when they're introduced to social media, the higher the incidence of depression and anxiety.
Say that again.
So the younger the person is when they're exposed to 24/7 social media, down the road, the higher the incidence of depression and anxiety is.
I think that's an important piece.
Sure.
Like, I think that right there gives some information that people listening to this could say, okay, I'm going to weigh these pieces, but I think it also gives an awareness. So if some people are out there going, shoot, my kid's 10, I already gave him a phone.
It's okay.
Thanks, Amie. It at least gives them awareness of what to watch for. So is there something as a parent, I've already made the decision, my child already has the phone, what am I watching for? What am I looking for? What can I change right now in the behavior of that phone and access to that phone? What do I need to be mindful of?
I think you need to be mindful of making sure that child has real life interactions with other kids on a regular basis, so that it doesn't become all of my people are online, or all of my social interactions are online.
Sure.
I think watch for sleep. I would not let a kid under the age of, again, this is me as mom as much as it is psychotherapist. I don't think that I would let a child under the age of 13 have a phone with them 24/7, plug in their room with them, in bed with them at night. I think we need to kind of have parameters. I guess my answer to parents when they say, well, what age can they have their phone with them all night? I would say, well, pretend that phone is their friends coming over. Would you let their friends sit in bed with them all night and have a, on a school night?
That's actually that's yeah.
So if it's, if your kid's 15 and it's a Friday night and, you're going to let them have that phone all night and they're up with their buds, whatever, that might be different than a 10-year-old who it's a Wednesday night. They should be in bed at, 8:30 at night or 9 o'clock at night. And now you put them to bed and they're on their phone till 1 a.m. You wouldn't let those people come over and sit on their bed all night with them.
Right.
You're doing the same thing by.
But you made a really good point before to say that, my utopian rural environment isn't the case for everybody. And one of the research studies that I did read was a Pew Research study, and was 13 to 17-year-olds, which is interesting, which it should be because you shouldn't have an account before that. 80% of teens in that age range say that social media makes them feel more connected. That's big.
Well, sure, because that's that 10 to 12 when the brain we're getting the areas of our brain are like so hungry for all that information. So the brains aren't developed to the early 20s. So
yeah, I know. I keep telling my son he's got one more year. He's going to be 26.
You know what? But so end to end, to go with your stat, I was reading something too this weekend, and it was talking about 13 to 17-year-olds, and it said and this is just in 2022, 35% of 13 to 17-year-olds reported using social media sites almost constantly. That was their quote. Almost constantly.
Wow.
I kind of want to come back to a couple of different thoughts that we had. That slot machine point that you had made earlier, Amie, I thought was a really good one because of that instant gratification that you feel like you can get when you open your phone. And I think that as a parent who has lived through enough of the social media age to kind of tell the difference, we've talked about it on this show before. For a young mind that doesn't understand, it's a highlight reel. You're nobody's posting about the crummy day they had, the leftovers that they've been eating for 2 weeks so they could go on that trip to Tahiti or wherever they're going, the different thing. All you're seeing is the trip to Tahiti and jumping off of a diving board and doing all this. You don't see the nuance, the other things that go on in there. And when you see a bunch of people showing their highlights, you're thinking, okay, well, what am I doing with my life that I'm not living up to that expectation? And I think that as a parent who's lived through enough of that social media age now. That's one of the things that I have to my advantage, that when my kids do get to the point where they do want to explore those things, I can have that conversation with them and say, hey, this isn't real life though. They're not waking up every day going down a water slide and like they've got jobs and they're earning, and granted, maybe they are doing it through their social media and getting their comeuppance that way. But I can say for myself, we've been open books with each other on this podcast. I went through a stretch in my time in radio where you're going through and you're doing meet and greets and you're seeing different people and you're doing different things, and perhaps the outside perspective is like, wow, what a life. A big stretch of that part of my life was depressing. Like for me was just, I had self-esteem issues. I had problems that I was going through, and to everybody else, you get that dopamine fix of seeing those likes come up and seeing those shares come up. And so having that experience, that's where I feel like, as much as it's overwhelming. I mean, we talk about how much you're on social media throughout a day, because I have to go on. Part of my job is to be social. I have to go on and make sure that there's stuff on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. And are we commenting back to those people? How are we engaging with listeners in a different way? So it can be a lot. And I thought you both made terrific points with just kind of, it almost felt like you both were saying, like, we don't need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to this. This is a new part of the situation, but do you trust your kid at a stove? Would you have would you let your friends sleep over in their bedroom at a certain age? Like, I think if you just kind of take a step back from this overwhelming thing that is social media and is artificial intelligence, and just approach it how we've always approached parenting and trying to help our kids and guide our kids, it's the same thing. You just have to understand your child, who they are with you, what responsibilities you feel like they can have, what you feel like their little heads and hearts can handle to a certain extent, and go off of your own experiences. I think it's just so important too. We were joking around about the things that maybe we did when we were in our 20s that would have been on social media and we would be embarrassed about today. Like, I'll have those conversations with my daughter when she's old enough. I'll have those conversations that, like, look, I've been fortunate enough to do different things in my life, and this all looks great. Behind the scenes, behind the camera, I was dealing with a lot and had to get those things settled, and went to therapy and talked to different people, because what I was feeling almost felt like I wasn't living up to these quote unquote expectations that I maybe unjustifiably didn't set for myself, that I thought other people were living by. So that's where, as parents, we got to kind of, it's that tough conversation of, look, I've lived this, I've been here. Here it is. You take this knowledge and go with it, but just know, if you go with it in a direction that I don't think is the right one, I'm reeling you right back in on the hook, because we got to make sure that we are finding that safe space of being social, being interactive, commenting on your favorite team's win that night, and letting this just completely take over your life and you just be immersed in something that, for the vast majority, may not even be quote unquote real life, for a lack of a better phrase.
And we've used that example so many times here to take breaks from media in general, not necessarily even social media, but how many of our episodes have we discussed that there are times when the information you're receiving, no matter your age, is simply overload and is contributing to your anxiety or contributing to your stress. So you're right, Crockett, it's not a new thing. It's just a new piece in the puzzle that we have to fit in to our lives. And it's becoming very normal. I mean, it is very normal. If I'm looking for a restaurant in a town that I'm in, a lot of times I will go onto Instagram and actually hashtag that town and try and find restaurants. Like, that's a very common thing for me to do, because I want to see what it looks like and I want to see what people say about it. So people use social media for a lot of different reasons. It's just age-wise being aware of the impact and what your reasons are for going onto those sites.
Yeah. And I
think
think
that's a good place. Go ahead, Amy.
No,
I'm
I was
sorry.
just going to say, yeah. So it's obviously the new normal, and now, I know we're probably kind of coming close to the end here, but when I was thinking about artificial intelligence and all these new apps that you can get for artificial intelligence and chat, where you can type something in and it'll write an essay for you. I mean, that's a whole different conversation. But one of the things that I was thinking, if we're going to try to end on something kind of cool, I think, is that I was reading about kids, children, adolescents, young adults with autism, and or just maybe just neurodivergence in general, right? And what they're finding with AI is that Stanford had done some research, and what Stanford found was that AI can deliver feedback constantly to people that maybe are learning how to speak or learning how to say different sounds or learning how to use a board where they can point to things and touch things and to communicate with people. And what they have found, Stanford has found, is that AI, obviously, it wasn't something in the top of it wasn't like at the top of my head, but AI doesn't get bored or frustrated. Humans get bored and frustrated. If I'm sitting here and I'm trying to teach you, and you're nonverbal, and I'm trying to teach you this, humans by nature get tired and frustrated. AI will sit with that kid for as long as it takes until they doesn't get tired and frustrated.
Sure.
And what they're finding is, wow, is that helping?
Yeah.
Where we're using AI in that context,
In a therapeutic sense.
with neurodivergent folks, to really help them make progress that as humans we couldn't help them with.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, feels like every conversation we have, you try to take a deep dive into the pros and the cons, and you try to make your own assessments, whether that's for yourself as an individual, for your family, whatever it may be, to the point that you guys are both making. This isn't going away anytime soon. It's going to be around. It's going to be a part of our lives. It's here to stay. And it's, our job as parents, and certainly your job as therapists to, just kind of help understand a little bit. We don't have all the answers, but just to kind of understand that I know, like I said, when I talk to my kids, that it's going to be like, this is cool. Let people be a part of your life. Let people see this, but this thing isn't everything. Everything doesn't happen right here. There's a whole world out there. And I think the main takeaway I have from this episode is go get a Scrabble board. Like, just let's go back to the nuts and bolts. Let's get Scrabble boards.
Don't play against Jody, but don't play against Jody because she cheats. Well,
no phones
That's
at
what
the
we learned
table
today.
with Jody.
No phones at the table.
Now play Scrabble. Ladies, this was a good conversation, an important conversation. I'm sure we're going to come back to this one soon. Very fascinated with that Stanford study that you were talking about, Amie. So certainly when it comes to artificial intelligence, I feel like this is certainly a door we're going to knock on again back down the road. But until then, we're gonna hang up the headphones for this one on the Just Start the Conversation podcast. It's brought to you by St. Luke's University Health Network. My name is Kevin Crockett, for Jody McCloud Missmer and Amie, Alanson, Dundon. Ladies, as always, thank you so much. Great insight today. Really appreciate it. And enjoy the rest of our summer while we still got it. Both of you enjoy it, okay?
You too.
You too.
It is the Just Start the Conversation podcast.